5,000. Yes, that's where we are. 5,000 listeners. I mean, I started this podcast in beginning, mid, and end of May, and now we have 5,000 people giving me their time to listen to my podcast, either in English or German. It's available. I have to say, so first, of course, thank you very much. I have no words, and that hardly ever happens. Well, I'm Northern German. We normally don't really talk, so saying I have no words is a bit ironic in this case. But still, this is the moment where I just not only want to say thank you, but also want to go through many, many questions which reach out to me via email and on different other channels where people ask about how does the podcast look like and how will the future look like. So first, of course, thank you for giving me your time. And many people ask very specific questions. I promised them to talk about that in a podcast episode. This is the time to see where this podcast goes. So first, people ask, what have we done so far? So this whole podcast is based on the skills you need in the area of sustainable leadership and everything you need to be a good and sustainable leader. We have either episodes which I talk through by myself or where I have interviews and we try to keep it in a 50-50 balance. Some people prefer the interviews, some people prefer the episodes which only I talk, and that's exactly why we do it that way, because we have people with different preferences and we want to serve them properly. What do we plan to do in the future? We plan to do it the same way. So we will have episodes where I am talking and we will have episodes where I have interviews. Very important here is that the frequency there will be about 1 or 2 episodes per week where I talk and 1 or 2 episodes per week where I have an interview. That, of course, because some people ask, isn't it possible to have like 1 episode per day? That is just too much work, because one thing is very important. People often ask, where do you know all these people from for your interviews? These are people I see during research. This podcast is not just me talking about my life and giving you a bit of hints from my personal ideas. This is all based in science, so it's proper evidence-based, proof-based knowledge, and that means I have to do research. It is quite a lot of work to do this, and we're going to do it properly. It's not important to have as many episodes out there as possible. It is important to have quality content out there. So some people ask, are there more resources? Yes, there are. And here we come to a very important point now, because I already pointed to the expert letter, which we have. When you look into the show notes, it's always the first line. You see expert-letter.nb-networks.com. And some people emailed me and said, look, I am not subscribing to newsletters because I don't like advertising. Yet I can totally understand that, and that is the reason why I'm annoyed with many newsletters or expert letters, as we call it as well. It's just that we don't have any advertising in there. Feel free to subscribe, look into it. It is on one page, it's very down to earth, it is content only. If you find any spot where any kind of advertising where it says buy here, buy my, it's just not there. The expert letter, which we send out once per week, which is also based on knowledge and science, is only there to inform you. And we do not only offer an article, because some people found out that I also have a leadership magazine, which is true. We host a leadership magazine on medium.com, the most known platform worldwide for social journalism. And some people clicked on it and said, well, there are 2 or 3 free articles per month and then I have to pay for it. So first, you don't pay that to me, you pay that to medium.com. I only get a fraction, which is metered by how many seconds you read my article. So pennies per month I get from that. But when you sign up for the expert letter, you get all this for free, because the expert letter gives you a link to the article, which gives you lifelong free access as long as you use that link. But this link is only available in the expert letter. That's why we have it, because we want to serve it to our community. So if you want to have free articles every week with no limitations, just sign up for the expert letter. That's an additional resource where you have things in writing about different topics about sustainable leadership. And we're going to do more of that in the future as well. So we have the podcast where it's all about the spoken word, and we have the weekly article. So normally you can say when we have 1 or 2 interviews per week and 1 or 2 episodes which I speak, plus the expert letter, which always goes out every Wednesday morning, it is 5 points of expertise and knowledge per week for free. And that's the rhythm how we try to keep it. So, of course, some people ask, and I told you that I find my interview experts basically when I see them speaking at other conferences, or I see them speaking online, or I see that they publish articles, or they get recommended by a group of peers. All of them are content-driven experts. and that's very important because some people ask, how can I get on your podcast? So first, simply ask. But just send me an email. And it's very important that I just give you a heads up about what the chances are. When you are an expert in a certain field, and I can really see that there's an expertise and an experience behind it, there's a good chance that sooner or later you may appear on my podcast. When you are an ego-driven trainer, speaker, coach, like number one leading, whatever you say, zero chance to get here. And when you are one of these people who say you don't need any skills, I tell you in this amazing workshop how you can make money online with a passive income, blah, blah, blah. These people do not get on the podcast ever because what you tell people is rip-off nonsense. Everything that happens here is based on proper content. Proof, evidence, science. That's how we work. Very important is here that when you want to get on this podcast, you can always email me. And by the way, you always get a polite response even when it's a no. It's just ask. Very simple. My favorite one out of the last two and a half, well, not even 2.5 months, where we reached out to 5,000 listeners, was where someone emailed me and said that he wants to do tarot card reading. Maybe you heard of tarot cards, the cards that allegedly tell you the future. Of course they don't. There's no scientific proof or evidence for that. So as long as you don't deliver that proof or evidence, I will keep to the point that they are not working. And this person wanted to do live tarot card reading. So first in a podcast, so we don't see the cards. So he would read out which cards are there, and then I can mention brand names, and on the results on the tarot cards, he will tell me the future of these brands, how these companies will develop, what they should do about leadership in the future. And even that person got a really polite response, which included a no. But still, you see, there is no threat. I'm not going to put it to public. I'm not going to put your name out there and say, hey, how ridiculous is that? Some things are just not a fit. And there are podcasts even for people who like to do tarot card, future reading, whatever that is. We all have our hobbies. So there are for sure podcasts where they host this. It's just not this one. So when you are an expert, feel free to reach out to me. People ask about positive and negative reactions because often people think, are there that many negative reactions? So the overwhelming reactions were positive. Negative reactions always were when I took a political stance. So for example, when I said I do not support Brexit, or when I say that Nigel Farage is far right-winged, or when I consider it as inappropriate that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and that podcast was just yesterday, and the amount of abuse I received towards her via email is astonishing. So every time I take a stand here, people kick off. And that tells me it's exactly the right thing to do. When you are far right-winged, not in the democratic spectrum, and you think it's okay to talk down on minorities, women, the LGBT community, or you basically just say that the monocultural approach of the leading white person, whoever you are, and you can talk down on anyone else, look, this is not your podcast, but feel free to send me emails because you don't get a response. You obviously have a lot of time free during the day to do that. But the good thing is 99% of all reactions were positive. So it's not that I am drowned in negative reactions, because normally people think that people who have negative things to say tend to write more emails. That is normally true, but here I can say most reactions are very positive. Then people ask me about my opinion on the speaking industry, because I am in the speaking industry, training, consulting, coaching, that's what I do. And I always tell them when you have reasonable offers, and reasonable offers are based on factual, science, proof, evidence, and proven results. You should take people who have the track record, who have done it by themselves. So, for example, I worked as a leader, and I worked in the corporate world, I worked in the mid-sized business world, I worked in the franchise world, I was a training implementation manager. You can see the award videos and look at my LinkedIn to see my CV. So I have done the leadership work before I started talking about it. When you have reasonable people, and by the way, reasonable people are never ego people. They are never, it's all about me. And you will never find excellence in training, speaking, coaching, or any kind of excellence when you go to one of these 5,000 people in one room events where they only sell to you and it's all about singing, dancing, and clapping and feel good moments and your personal breakthrough and hug your neighbor and whatever else. Look, we talk about proper results, and proper results are delivered by proper people. And this is why one email I found, or a couple of emails actually, which stated that. These are very funny because people say, why don't you sell more? So first, if you want to get in contact with me about training, speaking, coaching, so you speak at your conference, deliver training sessions for your company or for yourself, or deliver coaching for you, just do it. Just send me an email, and here we are. I mentioned it once or twice in my podcast that I do that. You can just send me an email and we take it from there. Some people say, is it affordable? I stick to the recommendation. There is a recommendation given in Germany, which was given a couple of years ago, for what people in this senior professional area should charge for training. I stick to exactly that recommendation. So I'm not one of these people who charge extraordinary amounts of money. I just stick to the standard rule for what should be charged. But of course, I don't dump or underprice the market. When you are a separate organization, or you can reasonably tell me that you're struggling for whatever reason, there's always a way how to get together. I just want to say up front, when you're a bank or insurance company and tell me you don't have the budget, that will most likely not lead to any kind of sustainable cooperation. Because when I look into your annual reports, the profit is there. It's just the budgeting that has to be adjusted then. So will I sell here? So people often wonder, because obviously some people were listening to this podcast waiting for the moment where I say, and now here is the online course, or now click here to book that. This is not going to happen. I am not using this podcast to sell. When you like what I say, you will be interested anyway and contact me, and here we are. But I'm not going to use this podcast for a hard selling approach to get you to some sort of conversion. Neither now nor in the future will I do selling here. Some people say, would you turn down someone who wants to advertise on your podcast? Well, depends on what they want to say. Probably I wouldn't turn them down, but advertising is labeled and marked as advertising. What I will not do is to get some pseudo expert on this podcast and we sort of receive the payment, won't tell you about it, and then just make it an unlabeled advertising. That is not going to happen. And by the way, that's illegal. You can't do advertising when you get paid for it and then not label it as advertising. So why don't I sell more? Because this podcast is based on content. So now people ask, how does the future of this podcast look like? The future of this podcast looks like the following. When you want to have the full experience of all content we offer, sign up for the expert letter, which means you get an email every Wednesday. It's content only, no advertising. 100% content, 0% advertising. That's a guarantee, and that will not change. So the podcast will be 1 or 2 episodes per week where I speak about a certain topic, and then 1 or 2 episodes per week where I have an interview partner. These interview partners are experts in their field. I thoroughly check them. I either worked with them, or I saw them speak, or I saw them in different projects, or I worked together with them. These are solid experts where I can happily say, if you want to get in contact with them, they are brilliant and they are excellent at what they do. So the future of this podcast will be based on content and not on selling you something. But now here's a very important point, and that's the point where you can help me. I ask for 60 seconds of your time. In these 60 seconds, you just click on something in the show notes of this podcast, which is my email address, nb@nb-networks.com, and you just take 60 seconds to send me an email where you simply say, these are topics I would like that you talk about in the future. Just a very short email. Of course, you can also add me on Facebook, Xing, LinkedIn, wherever you want to add me, Twitter. I'm on all of these platforms. You can also send it to me there, but just send me on any platform or via email which are the topics that interest you in the future, because we are now at the 5,000 people download and listener mark. We now, of course, want to see that we go for the next 5,000 and grow this podcast. Of course, I'm also very happy when you recommend my podcast to others. So thank you very much for getting back to me then and giving me a bit of an update, which topics for you are important in the future. And for today, there's only one thing left to say. Thank you very much for supporting this podcast. And for today, thank you very much for your time.